Hey there! Tonight we're riding back through 11 centuries to the vast grasslands of Central Asia, where the horizon stretches endlessly and the sky feels close enough to touch. You're about to spend one ordinary day with a nomadic family moving along the ancient Silk Road. Ordinary meaning felt yurts, fermented mare's milk, and the constant dance between survival and the sacred. Fair warning, you probably won't survive their schedule without gaining a profound respect for the sheer endurance required to thrive in one of Earth's harshest landscapes. So before you settle in, take a moment to like this video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what we create here. While you're at it, drop your city and local time in the comments. It's always fascinating to see where everyone's tuning in from, whether you're in Toronto or Tokyo. Now find a comfortable spot, maybe adjust your pillows, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first breath of dawn creeps across the steppe, painting the grasslands in shades of pearl and amber. The air holds that particular chill that comes just before sunrise, when even the earth seems to be holding its breath. Inside a felt-covered yurt, nestled in a shallow valley, where three stone outcroppings offer protection from the wind, you stir on a thick carpet layered over the ground. The scent of wool, smoke, and animal hide mingles in the dark interior. Beside you, a family of 6 begins to wake, their movements practiced and quiet. Batar, the father, rises first. He's a man in his mid-30s, weathered by sun and wind until his face resembles the landscape itself, creased and strong. Without lighting a lamp, he moves by memory and the faint glow of banked coals in the central hearth. The hearth sits at the exact center of the yurt, a sacred space that should never be crossed, even when no fire burns. This circular pit connects 3 worlds, the heavens above, the middle realm of humans, and the underworld below. Every nomad knows this cosmic axis runs straight through their home, an invisible pillar holding existence in place. Batar kneels and feeds the embers with dried dung, the primary fuel on these treeless plains. The dung burns hot and clean, releasing a surprisingly pleasant, earthy smoke that curls upward toward the circular opening in the roof. This opening, called the tonneau, serves as both chimney and skylight, revealing the deep blue of pre-dawn sky scattered with fading stars. The smoke carries prayers upward to Tengri, the eternal blue sky, the supreme deity who governs all existence. As warmth begins to spread through the yurt, Batar speaks a morning prayer, his voice low and rhythmic. He thanks Tengri for their survival through another night, asks for protection of their herds, and requests favorable weather for the day ahead. His wife, Altansitsetseg, sits up on the women's side of the yurt, the western half, and joins the prayer. Their 4 children remain still under sheepskin blankets, but you know they're awake, listening. Nomadic children learn silence early, understanding that survival sometimes depends on knowing when to be still. The interior of the yurt gradually reveals itself as the fire brightens. The circular lattice walls, called khana, are made of willow wood lashed together with leather cords, creating a collapsible framework that can be dismantled in under 2 hours and loaded onto 3 camels. The walls stand about 6 feet high before curving inward to form the domed roof, supported by poles that radiate from the central tonneau like spokes on a wheel. The entire structure is covered with multiple layers of thick felt made from sheep's wool, pressed and matted rather than woven. Did you know that the word nomad itself derives from the ancient Greek word for felt? These wandering peoples were literally known as the felt people, their identity inseparable from the material that sheltered them. The felt is remarkable stuff, capable of insulating against temperatures that plunge to 50 degrees below zero in winter, yet remaining surprisingly cool in summer heat that can exceed 100 degrees. Each layer of felt represents weeks of labor, primarily done by women, who wet the wool, pound it, roll it around poles, and then drag it behind galloping horses to achieve the proper density. The yurt's interior follows strict spatial rules that govern nomadic life. The northern side, directly opposite the door, is the place of honor where guests sit and where the family's most valuable possessions are stored in painted wooden chests. The eastern half belongs to the men, decorated with horse harnesses, bows, quivers, and leather bags containing tools. The western side is the women's domain, where cooking implements, dairy processing equipment, and sewing materials hang from the lattice walls. The southern section, nearest the door, is the least prestigious space, typically occupied by younger family members or reserved for temporary storage. Altansitseg moves to the western side and begins her morning work, while Bata dresses in layers against the cold. She wears a long robe called a deal, made from sturdy wool and wrapped with a bright silk sash obtained through trade. The deal's design hasn't changed in centuries because it doesn't need to. The high collar protects against wind, the overlap keeps body heat in, and the sash serves as a belt, pocket, and even emergency rope when needed. She pulls on leather boots with felt insoles and upturned toes, the traditional footwear that allows for easy mounting and dismounting of horses. Outside, the sound of horses nickering signals the herd's own awakening. Bata exits through the wooden door, which always faces south, to catch maximum sunlight and away from the harsh northern winds. The door itself is considered sacred, the threshold between domestic safety and the wild world beyond. You follow him out into air so crisp it seems to crackle. The steppe stretches in every direction, an ocean of grass painted silver by morning dew. The family's herd spreads across the nearest slopes, 70 horses, about 200 sheep and goats, 30 cattle, and 8 camels. This represents a moderately wealthy family by nomadic standards. Wealth on the steppe is never measured in gold or silver, but in animals, the living currency that provides food, clothing, shelter, and trade goods. Bata walks among the horses first, speaking to them in low tones, checking for injuries or signs of predators. Horses are the heart of nomadic culture, so essential that the people measure distances in horse days rather than miles. A good horse can travel 30 to 40 miles in a day, and a family's social status often depends more on the quality of their horses than the size of their herds. These aren't the massive draft horses of European farms, but smaller, hardy creatures with thick coats, bred over millennia to survive on sparse grass and find food under snow and ice. The sky brightens from deep blue to turquoise, the color nomads associate with Tengri himself. The eternal blue sky isn't merely a deity, but a living presence, visible and immediate. Unlike the gods of settled peoples who live in temples and require intermediaries, Tengri dwells overhead, watching every action, judging every heart. This direct relationship with the divine shapes nomadic spirituality, creating a faith that's personal, immediate, and intimately connected to the natural world. As the sun breaks the horizon, Bata turns east and lifts his arms in greeting. He pours a small libation of milk onto the ground, feeding the earth, Mother Age, whose fertility sustains all life. This daily ritual balances the masculine sky father with the feminine Earth Mother, maintaining harmony between the two great forces that bracket human existence. You return to the yurt where Altansesetseg has started the morning meal. The fire burns bright now, and the interior has warmed considerably. The felt walls trap heat efficiently while allowing enough ventilation through the crown opening to prevent smoke buildup. She pours water from a leather bag into a large bronze pot, a valuable possession that likely came through trade with Chinese merchants. Water is precious on the steppe, where rivers run far apart, and summer can parch the land for months. While the water heats, the eldest son, 14-year-old Timur, goes to milk the mares. Mare's milk is the foundation of the nomadic diet during the warm months, but obtaining it requires skill and patience. Unlike cows, mares produce relatively small amounts of milk and won't let it down unless their foal is present. Timur brings a foal to its mother, lets it begin nursing to stimulate milk flow, then gently pulls it away and quickly positions himself to milk the mare. He manages to extract perhaps 2 cups before the mare grows restless, and he must let the foal finish. This process must be repeated with multiple mares, milking them 5 or 6 times throughout the day to gather enough for the family's needs. The fresh mare's milk goes into a large leather bag hanging near the door, actually made from an entire horsehide with the legs tied off. Inside, yesterday's batch of kumis still ferments, a mixture of lactic acid, bacteria, and wild yeasts that break down the milk's abundant lactose. Mare's milk contains 40% more lactose than cow's milk, making it unsuitable for drinking fresh. The high sugar content would have a severe laxative effect, occasionally used medicinally, but not something you'd want to experience during a day of horseback riding across the steppe. Fermentation transforms this liability into an asset, converting lactose into lactic acid and alcohol, creating a slightly fizzy sour beverage with an alcohol content between 1 and 2.5%. Every person entering or leaving the yurt gives the kumis bag a few vigorous punches, keeping the fermenting milk agitated and the yeast active. This custom serves a practical purpose, but also reinforces community participation. Everyone contributes to the kumis, and everyone benefits from it. The beverage itself tastes complex, tangy, and effervescent, with notes of sour yogurt and a quick, clean finish. First-time drinkers often wrinkle their noses, but the nomads consider kumis nothing less than liquid sustenance, packed with vitamins, easily digestible protein, and probiotics that aid digestion. Altansetseg ladles kumis into wooden bowls, passing them first to you as the guest, then to her husband, then to the children in age order. The kumis is served at room temperature, neither cold nor heated, and the custom is to drink with both hands cupping the bowl, a gesture of respect and mindfulness. You take a sip, and the tartness makes your eyes water slightly, but there's something undeniably refreshing about it, a liveliness that seems to wake every cell in your body. Alongside the kumis, Altansetseg serves strips of dried meat, air-cured through the winter, and now hard enough to require serious chewing. This preserved meat represents part of last autumn's slaughter, when several sheep and a cow were butchered before winter's full grip set in. Nomadic peoples traditionally consume meat heavily during the cold season, when animals can be slaughtered without spoilage and when human bodies need extra calories to combat the bitter cold. During the warm season, the diet shifts toward dairy products, milk, yogurt, cheese, and kumis, preserving the herds while still obtaining nutrition from them. There's also arul, small, rock-hard pieces of dried curds made from yogurt. Seg produced these weeks ago, straining yogurt until it became a thick paste, then shaping it into small pieces and leaving them to dry in the sun. The result is virtually indestructible, lasting for months or even years, providing portable nutrition that can survive the roughest journeys. You pop a piece into your mouth and suck on it slowly as it gradually softens, releasing a concentrated sourness that's surprisingly satisfying. The family eats efficiently, without waste or excess. Every scrap of food represents hours of labor, whether herding, milking, processing, or preserving. Nothing is taken for granted in an environment where a harsh winter or summer drought can devastate herds and push families to the edge of survival. Yet there's no sense of grim desperation in this frugality, just a practical understanding of the world's realities and a deep confidence in there to thrive within those constraints. As the meal concludes, the family's preparations shift toward the day's main objective: movement. Nomadic life on the Silk Road isn't random wandering, but a carefully choreographed migration that follows ancient patterns. Families move between four seasonal pastures, spending summers in high mountain meadows where grass grows lush and insects are fewer, then descending to lower elevations for winter, where valleys offer protection from howling winds and snow doesn't pile as deep. Spring and autumn serve as transition times, moving between the extremes. Today's move won't be a major seasonal migration, but a shorter shift to a fresh grazing area within their summer territory. The current location has been grazed for 2 weeks, and the grass shows signs of overuse. Time to move on, allowing this area to recover before the family returns next year or the year after. This rotational grazing pattern has sustained the steppes for millennia, preventing the overgrazing that would turn productive grassland into barren desert. The process of dismantling a yurt unfolds like a carefully rehearsed dance, each family member knowing their role without discussion. The children gather all loose items, packing them into leather bags and wooden chests. Tsetsig and her eldest daughter carefully fold the felts, working from top to bottom. Batar and Temur untie the leather cords holding the structure together, collapsing the roof poles first, then the lattice walls, transforming the family's home into a neat stack of materials that will fit on 3-pack animals. Within 90 minutes, the yurt has vanished as if it never existed. Only a circle of compressed grass marks where it stood, and even that will disappear within days. This is the nomadic genius, the ability to live fully yet leave almost no trace, moving through the land like wind through grass. The loading of pack animals requires its own expertise. The 2-humped Bactrian camels serve as the primary beasts of burden. These magnificent creatures stand 6 feet at the hump, weigh up to half a ton, and can carry loads of 600 pounds without complaint. Their 2 humps store fat rather than water, but this fat can sustain them for weeks without food. More importantly, they can endure both extreme heat and extreme cold, functioning perfectly whether temperatures hit -20 degrees Fahrenheit or soar above 100. Did you know that camel caravans along the Silk Road could cover 30 to 40 kilometers per day, roughly 18 to 25 miles, traveling from sunrise to sunset? The merchants and guides preferred traveling during daylight hours when navigation was easier and the risk of ambush was lower, though in extreme heat they sometimes traveled at night. The steady rolling gait of a camel can lull riders to sleep in the saddle, and caravan leaders often tied bells to the last camel in their string. If the bell suddenly went silent, it meant someone might be stealing the animal, jolting the leader awake. Batar's family owns 8 camels, a substantial number that marks them as reasonably prosperous. Today, 3 will carry the yurt components, 2 will bear household goods, and 1 will carry Altansetseg and the youngest child, a daughter of just 3 years. The remaining 2 camels will serve as reserves, traveling light so they can be pressed into service if one of the loaded camels tires or suffers injury. Loading a camel starts with making it kneel, accomplished through a combination of voice commands and gentle pressure behind the front legs. Once kneeling, the camel accepts loads piled onto a wooden frame saddle, carefully balanced so weight distributes evenly across the animal's back. An improperly balanced load will cause sores and suffering, reducing the camel's working life. Nomads take animal welfare seriously, not out of abstract compassion, but practical necessity. A disabled animal represents lost wealth and capability. While the camels are loaded, the herds begin to move. Unlike settled farmers who keep animals in pens and paddocks, nomads manage open grazing herds that require constant supervision. The sheep and goats naturally cluster together, following a lead animal that the shepherds have trained over years. The cattle move more slowly, pausing frequently to graze, requiring periodic prodding to keep them advancing. The horses need least supervision, content to follow the main group, while ranging widely to find the best grass. Young Timur rides ahead on his own horse, a nimble mare of about 8 years. At 14, he's already an accomplished horseman, having sat in a saddle since age 3. Nomadic boys learn to ride before they can walk well, bound to their fathers on horseback, absorbing through osmosis the countless micro-adjustments that turn human and horse into a single, flowing entity. By adolescence, most nomadic youths can shoot arrows from a galloping horse, a skill that once made these peoples the most formidable warriors on earth. The Mongols under Genghis Khan conquered the largest contiguous land empire in history, largely because they perfected cavalry warfare. Their horses, though small by European standards, could survive on forage that would starve other breeds. Each warrior traveled with multiple horses, riding one while others rested, allowing Mongol armies to cover astonishing distances without exhaustion. They could shoot arrows in any direction from horseback, even backward at full gallop, making them nearly impossible to pin down or defeat through traditional infantry tactics. But today, there's no warfare, just the steady progress of a family and their herds moving across the endless steppe. The pace is measured, perhaps 2 miles per hour, slow enough that even the youngest animals can keep up. You walk alongside the caravan, sometimes mounting a horse for a while, other times simply striding through the grass that reaches to your knees, releasing a scent of earth and growing things with every step. The sun climbs higher, warming the air from chill to pleasant. The sky remains cloudless, a dome of brilliant blue that seems to extend forever. This is Tengri's realm, the limitless heaven that watches over all. Nomads believe that Tengri sees everything, knows every thought and deed, and judges humans not by their words, but by their actions. Living under such constant divine observation creates a spiritual culture that values integrity and action over elaborate ritual or theological debate. Around mid-morning, the caravan encounters its first other humans of the day, a trading party moving north from the great caravan city of Samarkand. The merchants travel with 32 camels arranged in strings of 8, each string tied head to tail to prevent any animal from wandering off. The lead merchant rides a horse, as do his 2 guards, while 3 camel drivers walk alongside the string, guiding the animals and watching for problems. Batar raises his right hand in greeting, a universal gesture of peace on the Silk Road. The merchant returns the gesture and calls out in Persian, a lingua franca of trade across Central Asia. Batar responds in a mixture of Turkic and Persian, languages blending as fluidly as the cultures they represent. Within moments, both parties have stopped, the social obligation of hospitality overriding any urgency to reach destinations. Altansetseg quickly sets up a portable hearth, just a few flat stones arranged in a circle with dried dung for fuel. She boils water for tea, not the delicate green teas of China, but a robust brick tea, actually pressed blocks of tea leaves, stems, and sometimes even dust, bound together for easy transport. She breaks off chunks and drops them into boiling water, along with milk, salt, and a small lump of butter. The resulting beverage, called sute tsai, is as much soup as tea, a savory, filling drink that provides calories and hydration simultaneously. The merchant gratefully accepts a bowl of tea, cupping it in both hands according to custom. Hospitality is sacred law on the steppe, where the distances between settlements can mean death for the unprepared. Any traveler can approach any yurt and expect food, water, and shelter, a custom so ingrained that even the poorest family will share their last morsel with a stranger. This isn't mere generosity, but enlightened self-interest. Today you help a stranger. Tomorrow your son might be that stranger far from home. The merchant explains that he's carrying silk from Chinese workshops, spices from India, and glassware from Persian cities, all destined for markets in the Khazar lands near the Caspian Sea. The goods have already changed hands a dozen times, each trader taking a profit while moving the merchandise a segment of its journey. Very few items travel the entire length of the Silk Road in a single caravan. Instead, goods flow westward in a relay, purchased and resold at each major stop. Batar asks about news from the south. The merchant shares information about grain prices in Samarkand, rumors of a new warlord consolidating power in Transoxiana, and reports of good rains that promise abundant autumn grass. This exchange of intelligence is as valuable as any trade goods. Information about weather patterns, political changes, bandit activity, and market conditions can mean the difference between prosperity and disaster for nomadic families who must plan their movements months in advance. In return, Batar offers information about the northern routes, which wells still hold water, where he's seen fresh wolf tracks, and which mountain passes remain choked with late-season snow. He also casually mentions that his family could provide fresh horses to the merchant's party if any of their animals have gone lame. This isn't aggressive salesmanship, but a subtle reminder that nomads provide essential services to Silk Road traders. The conversation turns to trade. The merchant admires Batar's horses, particularly a 3-year-old gelding with a deep chest and intelligent eyes. Horses are always in demand. Settled civilizations from China to Persia to the Byzantine Empire need constant supplies of steppe horses to maintain their cavalry forces. The martial effectiveness of mounted archers makes these horses strategic resources, valuable enough that trade in them can be restricted or controlled by empires seeking military advantage. After ritual protestations that the horse is barely adequate and probably not worth much, a negotiation begins. The merchant offers silk fabric, Chinese tea, and a small bag of semi-precious stones. Batar counters with a request for iron tools, particularly knife blades and an axe head. Iron is scarce on the steppe, which lacks forests for charcoal production and has few ore deposits accessible to nomadic peoples. Quality iron tools thus command premium prices, often worth more than their weight in silver. The negotiation continues for half an hour, not because either party is being difficult, but because this is the dance of commerce, a social ritual as much as an economic transaction. Eventually, they agree on a price. The horse in exchange for 10 yards of silk, 3 iron knife blades, 1 axe head, and a sealed packet of medicinal herbs from India. Both parties express satisfaction, and the horse changes hands with formal words, acknowledging the transaction. Did you know that horses were so valuable along the Silk Road that the Han dynasty of China established an official tea and horse trading system? Chinese tea traveled north and west in exchange for the war horses that the dynasty desperately needed to combat nomadic raiders. This trade persisted for centuries, moving thousands of horses annually and creating economic interdependence between the nomadic and settled worlds. Before parting, the merchant asks if Batar's family would be willing to guide his caravan through a particularly tricky section of mountains about 3 days north. He offers payment in trade goods and grain. Batar considers, consulting silently with Autansetzeg through a glance and tiny nod. Such work is common for nomadic families who possess intimate knowledge of the terrain and can navigate by landmarks invisible to outsiders. Guiding caravans provides income, but also takes time away from herding and other necessary work. Eventually, Batar agrees, naming a meeting place and time 3 days hence. The two parties exchange farewells and blessing, invoking Tengri's protection, then continue their separate journeys. Such encounters happen regularly along the Silk Road network, brief intersections between different worlds traveling parallel paths. The nomads need goods they cannot produce: iron, tea, grain for emergencies, and luxury items for special occasions. The merchants need services the nomads provide: fresh animals, guides, protection, and intelligence about routes and conditions. This economic symbiosis helps explain why the Silk Road functioned for nearly 2,000 years. It wasn't merely Chinese goods flowing to Rome or vice versa, but a vast, interconnected trading system where goods, ideas, technologies, and religions moved in all directions, carried by countless individuals making modest trades and incremental profits. The nomads occupied a crucial position in this network, controlling vast territories and providing the security, knowledge, and services that made long-distance trade possible. As noon approaches, the family reaches their destination, a broad valley where a small stream cuts through the grassland, providing reliable water. This is crucial. The herds need daily access to water, and a dependable stream or well determines where a family can camp. Competition for the best sites can be intense during dry years, sometimes leading to disputes between families or even small-scale violence, though most conflicts are resolved through mediation by respected elders. The spot Batar has chosen sits on a slight rise, offering good drainage and a clear view in all directions. Predators are a constant concern. Wolves hunt in packs, taking sheep and goats when they can. Snow leopards prowl the higher elevations, dangerous to anything that wanders too far from the group. Even foxes and eagles will take young lambs if given the opportunity. Positioning the camp, where sightlines are long, gives shepherds precious extra seconds to react to threats. The yurt goes up with the same practiced efficiency that brought it down. Within 2 hours, the family's home stands complete, looking as if it has occupied this spot for months. The door faces south. The felt layers are secured with woven straps, and smoke already curls from the crown opening where Altansetseg has rebuilt the fire. Inside, familiar objects return to their customary places. The wooden chests against the north wall, the horse gear on the east side, the dairy equipment on the west, creating immediate order and comfort. While the adults establish camp, the children scatter across the surrounding area, searching for dried dung to replenish the fuel supply. This is one of the first tasks nomadic children learn, essential work that contributes directly to family survival. The dried dung of horses, cattle, and camels becomes their primary fuel, and a camp needs several large bags of it to last through the day's cooking and the evening fire. Altansitseg begins preparing the midday meal, though calling it a distinct meal is perhaps misleading. Nomadic peoples eat when hungry and when work permits, rather than following strict meal schedules. She boils mutton that was slaughtered a few days ago, adding it to a pot with wild onions the children gathered, and a handful of grain obtained through trade. The resulting stew is simple but nourishing, the fat from the mutton providing crucial calories for people whose lives demand constant physical exertion. Bata and Temur ride out to check the dispersed herds, ensuring all animals have found their way to the new location. Most have, following the lead animals and their own instincts, but a few stragglers need rounding up. A small group of goats has wandered toward a rocky outcrop, attracted by the shrubs growing there. Timur expertly guides his horse to cut off their line of retreat, maneuvering them back toward the main herd with a combination of position and shouted commands. The afternoon unfolds in that particular rhythm of nomadic life, where urgent activity alternates with periods of watchful rest. There's always work to be done, always something requiring attention, yet there's also time for sitting, watching, thinking. Batar settles near the yurt with his tools, repairing a leather bridle that's showing wear. His hands work with practiced precision, punching new holes, threading replacement straps, testing knots and connections. This kind of maintenance never ends. Leather dries and cracks, wood splits, felt thins, and iron rusts. Everything requires constant care to remain functional. The two youngest children play near the yurt, engaged in games that are simultaneously entertainment and education. They build miniature yurts from sticks and scraps of felt, unconsciously absorbing the principles of the structure that will shelter them throughout their lives. They play herding games where sticks become horses and pebbles become sheep, learning through imitation the skills they'll need as adults. Nomadic childhood isn't entirely separate from adulthood, but a gradual transition where play blends seamlessly into work, and work often takes on playful elements. The eldest daughter, Oyuna, age 12, sits with her mother, learning to embroider. She's decorating a small cloth bag with traditional patterns, ram's horns spiraling in eternal curves, stylized flowers representing life and fertility, and geometric shapes that echo the felt patterns on yurt walls. These designs aren't merely decorative, but carry meaning, connecting the maker to ancestors who stitched the same patterns and to a cultural continuity that stretches back centuries. Did you know that Central Asian felt-making techniques have remained virtually unchanged for 3,000 years? Archaeological excavations have found felt fragments in Bronze Age tombs that show the same matting and pressing methods still used today. This technological stability isn't backwardness, but rather evidence that the technique was perfected so early that improvements became impossible. You can't improve on wool felt for the nomadic lifestyle. Nothing else provides The same combination of insulation, water resistance, and portability. As Oyuna's needle moves through the cloth, her mother tells stories. These aren't frivolous entertainments, but the primary method of cultural transmission in a society without written language. Through stories, children learn history, values, proper behavior, and practical wisdom. They hear about their ancestors' courage, about times of great hardship, and how the family survived, about clever solutions to difficult problems, and about the consequences of breaking sacred laws or offending the spirits. One story tells of an ancestor who encountered a white wolf in the mountains. Rather than killing the wolf, which would have provided valuable fur, the ancestor recognized the animal as a messenger from Tengri and let it pass unharmed. That night, the white wolf returned and led the family to a hidden valley where grass grew thick and sweet, saving their herds from a drought that devastated neighboring families. The moral is clear. Respect the natural world and its creatures, for they are all manifestations of the divine, and what might seem like loss in the moment can become salvation. Another story describes a great-grandmother who single-handedly held off bandits attempting to steal the family's horses. Armed with only a bow and her wits, she convinced the raiders that she was merely the advance scout of a much larger party that would arrive shortly. The bandits fled, and the horses were saved. This story teaches both practical courage and the importance of clever thinking, showing that intelligence can be as valuable as physical strength. These stories also preserve historical memory in a culture that doesn't maintain written records. Events, migrations, famines, wars, and triumphs are all encoded in narrative form, passed down through generations with remarkable consistency. Scholars studying nomadic peoples have found that oral histories can preserve accurate information for centuries, sometimes even millennia, particularly when the information concerns survival-relevant knowledge like the locations of springs, the timing of seasonal changes, or the characteristics of good grazing land. As afternoon drifts toward evening, Altansitsig calls everyone to help with the mare milking. This is a communal task, requiring multiple hands. Temur and Oyuna work together, approaching the mares with foals, while the younger children hold the leather buckets. Each mare must be milked 5 or 6 times per day, yielding only small amounts at each session. The collected milk goes into the fermentation bag, joining yesterday's kumis, the culture that will transform today's fresh milk into tomorrow's drink. The process of making kumis is simultaneously simple and delicate. Fresh mare's milk is simply added to a bag containing active kumis from previous batches. The existing bacteria and yeasts immediately begin fermenting the new milk, a process similar to sourdough bread making where a starter culture perpetuates indefinitely. The kumis must be agitated regularly, traditionally accomplished by hanging the bag, where it will be punched or stirred whenever someone passes. This agitation prevents separation, ensures even fermentation, and produces the characteristic slight carbonation. Kumis can be made at different strengths depending on fermentation time. Light kumis, fermented for just a day or two, is mildly sour and barely alcoholic, suitable for children and morning consumption. Strong kumis, fermented for a week or more, becomes quite tart and can reach alcohol levels around 3%, approaching the strength of weak beer. The nomads drink both types depending on circumstance and preference, and experienced kumis drinkers claim to detect subtle variations based on the mare's diet, the season, and even the family's specific bacterial culture. The evening milking complete, Batar rides out for a final check of the herds. This is one of the most crucial times of day. Predators hunt most actively at dawn and dusk, and a shepherd's vigilance determines whether the family eats meat in a few months or suffers catastrophic losses. He circles the dispersed animals, his eyes constantly scanning the surrounding grassland and rocky outcrops for any sign of movement. His horse's ears flick forward, detecting something before Batar's human senses register anything amiss. He reins in and studies the terrain. There, several hundred yards distant, a grey shape moves through the grass. Wolf, probably alone, which is unusual but not unheard of. A lone wolf won't attack healthy adult sheep in daylight with a mounted shepherd nearby, but it might be scouting, gathering information about the herd's defenses for a pack that will return after dark. Batar urges his horse forward, not at a full gallop, but at a purposeful canter that communicates confidence and control. He unslings his bow, nocking an arrow without conscious thought, the muscle memory of a lifetime, making the motion as natural as breathing. The wolf sees him coming and breaks into a run, disappearing into a rocky area where pursuit on horseback would be difficult. Batar doesn't follow, but makes a mental note of the location. Tonight, he and Timur will take turns standing watch, ready to use fire and a noise to drive off any pack that approaches. As he returns to camp, the sun sits low on the western horizon, painting the entire steppe in gold and amber light. The grasslands seem to glow from within, every seed head catching fire, every stone casting a long shadow. This is the magic hour on the steppe, when the ordinary world transforms into something transcendent. Batar pauses for a moment, simply witnessing the beauty, acknowledging Tengri's artistry in the play of light and space. Back at the yurt, preparations for the evening meal are underway. Autantsitseg has made fresh bread, not the refined wheat bread of cities, but a dense, unleavened flatbread baked directly on hot stones. She brushes it with butter churned earlier in the day, and the smell is intoxicating, yeasty and rich. There's also more mutton stew, thickened now with barley, and bowls of fresh yogurt topped with a drizzle of honey, a rare luxury obtained through trade. The family gathers around the fire as darkness settles over the steppe. The temperature drops rapidly once the sun disappears, a nightly reminder of the harsh environment they inhabit. But inside the yurt, warmth and light create a bubble of comfort. The fire crackles, sending sparks upward through the crown opening where they join the emerging stars. Those stars hold deep significance for nomadic peoples who navigate by them, read seasons in their movements, and see in their patterns the stories of gods and heroes. Batar tells the children to look up through the tonneau, pointing out major constellations. That cluster there is the seven old men, what other cultures call the Pleiades. When they rise high in the sky, it's time to begin preparing for winter. Over there is the Great Bear, which never sets, always circling the celestial pole. Nomadic peoples across Eurasia share stories about this constellation, seeing it as everything from a cosmic hunt to a great wagon carrying the souls of ancestors. Timur asks his father about navigation, and Batar explains how to use the stars as a compass. The North Star holds steady while all others rotate around it. If you're lost on the steppe at night, find the North Star, and you'll know your directions. The Milky Way stretches across the sky like a river of light, following a path that roughly aligns with seasonal migration routes. Even without conscious awareness, Nomadic peoples have internalized these celestial patterns, making their way across vast distances with remarkable accuracy. The conversation turns to the upcoming guiding job for the merchant caravan. Batar explains the route they'll take through the mountains, the potential difficulties, and how they'll need to prepare. Temur listens intently. This will be his first time serving as an assistant guide, an important milestone in his development toward full adult responsibilities. He'll need to demonstrate knowledge of the terrain, skill at managing pack animals, and the ability to anticipate and solve problems. Altansetsegi voices a practical concern. The work will take them away from their primary location during a crucial period when the herds need close supervision. They'll need to arrange for a neighboring family to check on their animals, a request that will create a reciprocal obligation. This is how nomadic society functions, not through market exchanges or formal contracts, but through networks of mutual obligation. You help others when they need it, trusting that they'll help you in return. These invisible bonds of reciprocity create a social safety net in an environment where individual families are vulnerable to disaster. The meal concludes with hot kumis, warmed directly in a bronze bowl set near the fire. Hot kumis tastes quite different from the room temperature version, the slight alcohol more pronounced, the sour notes mellowed by heat. It's a soothing drink for cool evenings, warming the body from the inside. After eating, Oyunar brings out a horsehead fiddle, a traditional instrument with two strings made from horsehair stretched across a trapezoidal body. She draws a bow across the strings, producing a haunting, nasal tone that seems to capture something essential about the steppe itself, vast and lonely and strangely beautiful. She plays an old melody, one that's been performed around nomadic fires for centuries, its origins lost in time. Music serves crucial functions in nomadic culture beyond mere entertainment. It preserves oral history through epic songs that can last for hours, recounting the deeds of heroes and the history of clans. It provides emotional release, allowing people to express feelings that the stoic demands of survival usually require them to suppress. And it creates communal bonds, moments when the family, or even multiple families, join together in shared experience. As Oyunar plays, her father begins to chant portions of an epic poem, the Manas, a vast narrative that tells the story of a legendary Kyrgyz hero. The full epic would take days to recite, comprising over 500,000 lines, making it one of the longest oral poems in human history. Specialized performers called manashi devote their lives to mastering and performing this epic, considered not merely entertainers, but sacred vessels preserving cultural memory. Batar knows only fragments, not the whole epic, but even these fragments carry power. They tell of battles against enemies, of loyalty and betrayal, of love and loss, of the eternal struggle between good and evil. The characters face challenges much like those nomadic peoples face every day. Harsh weather, dangerous journeys, scarce resources, and the need for courage in the face of overwhelming odds. Through these stories, listeners learn values, see their own struggles reflected in heroic terms, and connect with ancestors who faced similar challenges. The younger children's eyelids grow heavy as the evening progresses. Altansetse gathers them, helping them settle under thick sheepskin blankets near the western wall. The sleeping arrangements in a yurt aren't based on privacy, but on temperature zones. The warmest spot is near the fire, but not so close as to risk burns. The coldest spots are near the door and at the wall's base where cold air settles. Sleeping positions follow age and status hierarchies, with the youngest and oldest getting the warmest places. As the children drift towards sleep, Autantsetseg softly sings a lullaby, a simple, repetitive melody about the moon watching over flocks and protecting all creatures through the night. The moon holds special significance in nomadic spirituality, associated with the feminine divine, with cyclical renewal, and with the gentle light that guides travelers through darkness. Some traditions consider the moon and sun to be the eyes of Tengri, watching the world from above, nothing escaping their gaze. Batar and Temur prepare for the night watch. They won't both stay awake, instead taking turns in 3-hour shifts, one watching while the other sleeps lightly, ready to wake at any sign of trouble. They position themselves near the door with their bows and a supply of arrows, also laying several torches ready to light. Fire is the nomadic shepherd's best defense against predators. Wolves fear flames, and even a determined pack will usually retreat from a line of fire. The first watch falls to Batar. He settles into that state of relaxed alertness that experienced shepherds develop, simultaneously calm and vigilant. His eyes scan the darkness beyond the fire's glow, ears tuned to any sound that doesn't belong to the natural nighttime soundscape. Horses moving restlessly, sheep bleating in alarm, a particular quality of silence that suggests predatory presence. All these signal danger. The night is mostly quiet, though. The herds settle into their own version of sleep, the horses standing in a loose group with lowered heads, the sheep and goats lying down in clusters that provide mutual warmth, the cattle chewing cud with the slow, meditative rhythm of ruminants. The camels sit in their characteristic position, legs folded beneath their bodies, necks held erect, looking like strange, shaggy monuments silhouetted against the stars. Above, the eternal blue sky transforms into something even more magnificent. A black dome scattered with countless stars that seem to multiply the longer you watch. The Milky Way stretches across the zenith like a river of light, so bright in this unpolluted darkness that it casts faint shadows. Nomadic peoples see this celestial display every clear night, a constant reminder of their place in a cosmos vast beyond comprehension, yet somehow intimate and immediate. Batar's thoughts drift as he watches, but they don't stray far from practical concerns. He thinks about the upcoming guiding work, calculating the route and the compensation, considering whether to ask for grain or trade goods as payment. He thinks about the wolf he saw, worrying slightly about whether it presages a larger problem. He reflects on Temur's development, pleased by his son's growing competence, but also aware that in a few years the boy will need his own horses and equipment, a significant investment. These practical concerns are interwoven with spiritual awareness. Batar sees the divine not in transcendent otherness, but in immediate presence. Tengri is the sky overhead. Eje is the earth beneath his feet. The spirits of ancestors are the wind that moves through grass and the instinct that guides his decisions. The sacred isn't separate from the mundane, but pervades it completely, making every choice a spiritual act, and every moment an opportunity for connection with forces larger than himself. This worldview creates a spirituality that's both simple and profound. There are no temples because the entire steppe is a temple. There are no priests because every person maintains direct relationship with the divine. Rituals exist, but they're practical actions. Offerings of milk, prayers of gratitude, libations poured on the earth, rather than elaborate ceremonies requiring specialized intermediaries. The result is a faith that's deeply integrated into daily life, inseparable from the acts of herding, traveling, and surviving. Did you know that Genghis Khan attributed his spectacular military success partly to divine favor from Tengri? He saw himself not as a conqueror motivated by greed, but as an instrument of heaven's will, chosen to unite the Mongol tribes and establish order across the chaotic world. This belief wasn't mere propaganda, but deeply held conviction, shared by his followers and enemies alike. Even the settled civilizations that fell before Mongol armies often interpreted their defeats as signs of heaven's judgment, evidence that the nomadic peoples carried divine mandate. Batar's watch passes without incident. At the agreed time, he wakes Temur, who takes the second shift with the easy competence of youth. Batar settles near the fire, not quite sleeping, but achieving that state of rest that allows quick awakening if needed. Outside, the night continues its slow revolution toward dawn, stars wheeling overhead, small sounds marking the passage of time. Timur sits alert, his young eyes sharp in the darkness. This is part of his education, learning to read the night, to distinguish normal sounds from threatening ones, to maintain vigilance hour after hour when the body craves sleep. These skills will serve him throughout his life, whether he continues as a shepherd or becomes a caravan guide, warrior, or trader. The fundamental competencies remain the same: awareness, endurance, practical knowledge, and the ability to make good decisions under pressure. As he watches, Tamer thinks about his future. He knows his life path will follow patterns established over generations: marriage to a girl from a neighboring family, gradually building his own herds, eventually establishing his own yurt and raising his own children. Yet there's also space for variation. He might travel farther than his father, might engage more deeply in the trade networks that bring goods across the Silk Road, might serve as a guide for important caravans carrying precious goods. The nomadic world provides structure without rigidity, tradition without stagnation. The eastern sky begins to lighten almost imperceptibly, that subtle shift from black to deep blue that announces dawn's approach. The stars fade gradually, the brightest holding on longest, until they too surrender to approaching daylight. Birds begin to call, their songs marking territorial claims and romantic invitations. The herds stir, stretching, beginning to graze on dew-wet grass. Another day begins on the steppe, much like countless days before it and countless days to come. Batar wakes without needing to be called, his internal clock attuned to the rhythms of sunrise after a lifetime of early rising. He steps outside to greet Tengri's new day, repeating the morning prayer, pouring the milk libation, acknowledging the eternal cycle that makes existence possible. The sun breaks the horizon, and golden light floods across the grassland, illuminating a world that's simultaneously harsh and beautiful, demanding and generous, ancient and always new. Inside the yurt, the family stirs. Altansitseg rebuilds the fire, the smoke curling upward through the crown opening, carrying morning prayers to the sky. The children wake grumpily, rubbing eyes and complaining about the cold in that universal language of childhood that transcends culture. Oyuna pours kumis into bowls for breakfast while her mother sets out dried meat and bread left from the previous evening. The morning meal is brief and functional, fuel for the day ahead rather than a social occasion. There's work waiting. The mares need milking. The herds need checking. Equipment needs inspection and repair. The perpetual cycle of maintenance and supervision that keeps a nomadic family functioning never stops, each day bringing its own requirements, its own small crises and victories. But before plunging into the day's demands, the family takes a moment together, sitting around the fire, connected by bonds of blood and shared experience. They're part of something larger than themselves, links in a chain extending backward through countless ancestors and forward through generations yet unborn. They occupy a particular place in the cosmos, children of Tengri and Ege, sustained by their herds, protected by their traditions, guided by the accumulated wisdom of their culture. This is the essence of nomadic existence on the Silk Road. It's not romantic adventure or desperate survival, but something in between. Ordinary life lived extraordinarily well. These people have developed a way of living that allows them to thrive in one of Earth's most challenging environments, extracting sustenance from grasslands that would defeat agricultural peoples, moving seasonally to match the land's rhythms rather than trying to force the land to match theirs. They serve as crucial links in the Great Silk Road network, not merely facilitating trade, but making it possible. Without nomadic guides, caravans would lose their way in the featureless grasslands. Without nomadic horses, settled empires would lack the cavalry they need for defense. Without the geographic knowledge, practical skills, and cultural mediation nomadic peoples provide, the sustained contact between East and West that characterizes the Silk Road era would never have occurred. Yet they remain mysterious to outsiders, their way of life so different from that of settled peoples that it's often misunderstood or dismissed. Settled civilizations tend to see nomads as primitive, lacking the refinements of urban culture, living degraded existences of constant hardship. But this judgment reveals more about the judges than the judged. Nomadic peoples have chosen their lifestyle deliberately, or rather, their ancestors made choices thousands of years ago that created a cultural trajectory leading to this way of life. These aren't failed farmers or incomplete humans, but people who've solved the problem of living in the world in a radically different way, a way that's sustained them for millennia and created cultures of remarkable sophistication. Their technology is perfectly adapted to their needs. Their social structures balance individual autonomy with communal support. Their spiritual traditions provide meaning and guidance without requiring elaborate institutions. They've achieved a kind of perfection within their environmental niche, like a predator whose every attribute fits its role. As the family finishes breakfast and begins dispersing to their various tasks, you're left with a profound sense of privilege at having witnessed this slice of life. You've seen sunrise on the steppe, tasted kumis fermented in a horsehide bag, felt the rough wool of felt walls, heard ancient melodies played on a horsehead fiddle, and watched stars wheel overhead in darkness so complete that the Milky Way blazes like a celestial highway. You've also glimpsed something more subtle, a way of being human that's coherent and complete, needing nothing from outside to justify or validate itself. These nomadic peoples aren't awaiting rescue by civilization. They are civilized, just in a mobile rather than sedentary form. They have their own aesthetics, their own ethics, their own ways of organizing time and space and social relations. They've achieved a sustainable existence that can be maintained indefinitely without degrading the environment that supports them, a feat that settled agricultural and industrial societies have conspicuously failed to match. The sun climbs higher, warming the air, evaporating the dew from the grass. In the distance, a hawk rides thermal currents, wings spread motionless as it searches for prey. The herds graze peacefully, tails swishing away flies, hooves and jaws, creating that constant low rustle. That's the soundtrack of pastoral life. Smoke rises from the yurt, marking human presence in a landscape that otherwise belongs to wind and grass and sky. This is one day in the life of one family on the ancient Silk Road. Multiply it by thousands of families spread across millions of square miles, each following their own seasonal circuits, each serving as nodes in the vast network that connected East and West. Their stories are rarely recorded, their names forgotten by history. They built no monuments, wrote no books, left behind few artifacts beyond the bones of their herds and the ghostly circles where their yurts once stood. Yet they were the Silk Road's circulatory system, the living blood that kept trade and ideas flowing across Eurasia. Without them, the Chinese Empire and the Roman Empire would have remained mutually ignorant of each other's existence. Buddhism would never have spread to East Asia. European horses wouldn't have gained the speed and endurance they acquired through mixing with steppe bloodlines. The great caravans, carrying silk, spices, precious stones, and exotic ideas, would have ended their journeys at the edges of civilization, unable to cross the vast grasslands that stretched between. The nomads made connection possible. They were intermediaries, translators, guides, and guardians. They knew the terrain in ways sedentary peoples couldn't imagine, reading weather in cloud formations, finding water sources through vegetation patterns, navigating by landmarks invisible to foreign eyes. They provided the services that made the Silk Road function: fresh horses, reliable guides, armed protection, accurate intelligence about routes and conditions. And they did this while maintaining their own distinct culture, never becoming mere servants of settled civilizations, but remaining independent peoples with their own agendas and interests. They traded when it benefited them, fought when necessary, migrated according to their own ancient patterns rather than commercial convenience. The Silk Road operated on their terms as much as on anyone's, adapting to the realities of steppe life rather than imposing external order on the grasslands. As you prepare to return to your own time and place, Batar catches your eye and nods, a simple gesture acknowledging shared humanity across the gulf of centuries. You raise your hand in farewell, miming the gesture you saw him use with the merchant, a universal sign of peace and well-wishing. Then you step outside the yurt, into the brilliant morning, and let the grasslands take you back. The steppe remains much as it was 1,000 years ago, still vast, still harsh, still beautiful. The nomadic way of life persists in some regions, though diminished by the forces of modernity that press all peoples toward urban living and sedentary existence. But the grasslands remember. They hold the memory of 10,000 generations who found life in their apparent emptiness, who extracted richness from their austerity, who saw beauty in their limitless horizons. So close your eyes and listen. Hear the wind moving through grass, the distant whinny of horses, the creak of leather and wood as a yurt settles into place. Smell the smoke of dung fires, the pungent sweetness of fermented mare's milk, the dusty scent of animals and earth. Feel the sun warming your face and the chill that never quite leaves the air, even on the hottest summer day. This is the world of the nomads, the people who made the Silk Road possible and who lived lives of dignity, courage, and quiet magnificence in one of Earth's most demanding environments. If you found this journey meaningful, if you've gained some insight into a way of life radically different from your own, yet fully human, I invite you to like this video and subscribe to the channel. These deep dives into historical daily life take significant research and effort to produce, and your support helps make them possible. Drop a comment, sharing your thoughts, or suggesting other historical perspectives you'd like to explore. Thank you for traveling with me to the ancient steppe, for sitting around nomadic fires, for tasting kumis and hearing epic songs sung under stars that still shine as brightly as they did a millennium ago. Until our next journey through time, may the eternal blue sky watch over you, and may you find your own way to live in harmony with the world that sustains you. Good night.